Popeye. Okay.
Action.
Okay, here you go. So this is a loom. This is a loom.
This is a what?
A loom.
Oh, loom. Oh, this is a loom.
A loom. A loom.
Not a Oompa Loompa.
Loon.
It rhymes with moon.
Boom.
Boom. Boom. Rhymes with boom.
Boom goes the dynamite.
Boom. 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 It's a loom. Looms come in all different shapes and sizes. And what's cool about looms is that we can make fabric on a loom. We can make designs. You can make rugs on a loom. You could do a lot. You do it in a room when you work on a loom, but I'm outside, so I'm not in a room. Anyway,
Could
so
you do
if
a loom on Zoom?
A loom on Zoom? Sure.
On the moon?
I could zoom the loom.
Zoom the loom.
Okay, but check it out. So if you look at your clothes are fabrics that are, most of you are like, you know, you have clothes that have been made on some sort of mechanical loom. So a lot of tiny threads going in different opposite directions to create a fine mesh. So what we're gonna do is make one on kind of it's gonna be a rougher sort of weave, not as fine as your clothes typically. And so it's really simple. It's a really basic technique of just over, under, over, under, over, under. And we're gonna use, this is called the warp of the loom, and we're gonna go under and over the warp, and we're just gonna create a fabric. And I have a student who made one, and he used different types of yarn. So you use like a thicker yarn and a thinner yarn, and it kind of gives a different effect. You could use different colors, you could use different sizes, different texture, and you just create your fabric that way. What's cool about it though in 4th grade is that when we first started 4th grade, we were learning about Native Americans and the indigenous people here in California. They didn't have this technology. This is a technology, and you know, they didn't weave their clothing until they started working in the missions, and then the Europeans, the Spanish, taught them this method of making fabric. So they went from wearing animal skins to wearing cotton or wool woven clothing. So that's kind of how it connects to 4th grade. But I think it also connects just because it's rhythmic and it's like a pattern. So I'm just gonna show you really quick how to do it. We're gonna use these simple looms, but maybe later we could use these looms. So this is gonna make something long. This will make something more wide. But you just start with your yarn of choice, and you're going to take your yarn and pass it under, over, under, over. And sometimes we'll use needles, but you know, these are pretty easy to do with our hands without needles. So what I just did, can you see that? So I just went under this string, and now I'm gonna go over the next one. And then under the one after that. Oh. Over, under, over, under. Dun, 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 dun. And then I push it up to the top. So I have this thing, but then I have all this string on the side. So I'm going to pull it da, 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 until I have a little bit hanging off the end. So like that. Okay. Now I'm going to go back the opposite way. And since I left with going under, I'm going to start this next row going over. So over, under, over, under. And if you make a mistake, you can fix it, you can take it out. It's pretty easy.
Good teachers.
Yeah, super.
Mistakes are good teachers.
Yeah. All right, check it. And then if you notice, I didn't yank it super tight, because if you yank it super tight, it's gonna pull these threads in like this, and we don't want it like an hourglass. We want it to be even. So we're gonna pull it, and we're gonna be really gentle. And then we're gonna push it up with our fingers. Weavers do all kinds of cool things. They have all these tools to push up and brush through, and they've got needles and shuttles that go through. But we're doing a really basic form, and you can just use your fingers. Boop. And now I'm gonna do the next row. And since I left with over, I'm going to start my next row going back this way with under. And hopefully it's not windy when you're weaving. You can weave in the wind, but I don't advise it. Hey, Ernesto! No, we're not having a party.
Weaving party.
It's weaving. I'm showing him how to weave. There's a lot going on. And then this is another thing that's really cool about weaving is that if you go to Mexico today, there are a lot of indigenous people living in Mexico that still do make their clothes by weaving, and they use something called a backstrap loom. And they do it in the middle of everything. They have kids running around, they have people making food, and it's kind of like you do it and it becomes a time for you to sit and just talk and be. And you don't stress out. And if you make a mistake, you just undo it and you go back. And then what happens is little by little, your fabric starts to appear. And in the meantime, maybe you've had a good conversation, or maybe you had a time to rest and take a break. Maybe you had some quiet time to get away from people, so you use it in any way you want. But in the end, you get some cool design. And it's going to come out in a lot of different ways. Maybe it's going to look really bad at first, and maybe you see that it gets better over time, but just have fun doing it. And that's it. Ta-da!